Okay, part two, going over Jewish people in the set of encyclopedias from the 1890s to see what the difference is from the 1920s. Also, hun, just want to apologize to you now because I'm going to use your comment a bunch of times for this because there is 10 pages in this book. Make sure you watch part one, and you can hold it at 2 times speed if you want. I know some of the information just doesn't seem useful, but I have to go through it all to get to the stuff that's absolutely crazy. The enormous and wasteful expenditure of Solomon forced him to lay heavy taxes on the people. His wealth did not enrich them, it rather made them poorer, and although gifted with transcendent wisdom and the most brilliant mental powers, towards the end of his life he presents the sad spectacle of a common Eastern despot, voluptuous, idolatrous, occasionally even cruel, and his reign, 1015 to 977 BC, cannot but be regarded both politically and financially as a splendid failure. After his death, the Hebrew monarchy, in which the germs of dissension, chiefly jealousy against the influence of Judah, had been silently growing up for many a year, split into Rehoboam into 2 sections, 975 BC, the kingdom of Judah under Rehoboam, son of Solomon, and the kingdom of Israel under Jeroboam, the Ephraimite. The former of these countries, there's tape, compromised the 2 tribes of Judah and Benjamin, together probably with some Danite and Simeonite cities. The latter, the remaining 10, after 19 kings of different dynasties, among whom Jeroboam, Ahab, Joram, Jeroboam the second, Pekah may be mentioned, had reigned in Israel, few of whom succeeded to the throne otherwise than by murder of their predecessors. The country was finally conquered by Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, its sovereign Hoshea thrown into prison, the mass of the people carried away captive 720 BC into the far east, the mountainous regions of Media, and their place supplied by Assyrian colonists. These mingling and intermarrying with the remnant of the Israelites formed the people called Samaritans. See Samaria. Among the 20 kings of the house of David who ruled over Judah, Jehoshaphat, Uzziah, Hezekiah, and Josiah distinguished themselves both by their ability as rulers and by their zeal for the worship of Jehovah. Yet even they were, for the most part, unable to stay the idolatrous practices of the people, against which the prophet's voice even could not prevail. Other kings were, for the most part, more or less unfaithful themselves to the religion of their fathers, and unable to withstand the power of Egyptians, Assyrians, and Babylonians, to each of whom they in turn became tributary, until at last Nebuchadnezzar stormed Jerusalem, 588 BC, plundered and burned the temple, put out the eyes of King Zedekiah, and carried off the most illustrious and wealthy of the inhabitants, prisoners of Babylon. The Israelites, who had been exiled 134 years before the inhabitants of Judah, never returned. What became of them has always been a matter of vague speculation. See Babylonish captivity, Anglo-Israelite theory, and Beni Israel. We're going to have to do those things too. All that we know of the condition of the Hebrews during the captivity relates exclusively to the inhabitants of the kingdom of Judah, and so mild, especially during the latter years, was the treatment which they received in the Babylonian Empire, that when liberty was announced to the whole body of the captives, only the lowest of the low returned, together with the Levites and priests. The book of Esther likewise bears testimony to the numbers that had remained scattered over the vast empire. The influence of this exile, however, was of most striking and lasting nature. Babylon henceforth became and remained up to about 1000 AD the second land of Israel, in many respects even more highly prized than Palestine. To this brief period of captivity must be traced many of the most important institutions of the synagogue in its wider sense. Common religious meetings with prayer were established. Many of the Mosaic laws were reinformed in their primitive rigor, and the body of the oral law began to shape itself, however rudely, then and there. Besides, there began to grow up and unfold itself the belief in a Messiah, a deliverer, one who who should redeem the people from their bondage. The writer of the last 27 chapters of Isaiah, who is usually called by modern scholars the younger Isaiah, is held to belong to this period and expresses in glowing languages the hopes of the exiles. No less do many of the poems begin to this time. Excuse me. From this period, likewise, the belief of the resurrection of the body and the immortality of the soul, as well as the notion of angel and demons, begins to enter more distinctly into the general creed. The exile is generally computed to have lasted 70 years. This is not strictly correct. It lasted 70 years if reckoned from the capture of Jerusalem to the reign of Jehoiakim, 606, but only 50 counting from the destruction of Jerusalem. When Cyrus, the Persian king, had overthrown the Babylonian kingdom, 538 BC, he issued an edict permitting the exiles to return home, and a minute account of the circumstances attended this joyous event is given in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. The foundations of the second temple were laid in the second year of the return, but in consequence of the interference of the Samaritans, the work had to be laid aside. It was not resumed till the second year of Darius Hystaspes, 520 BC, and was finally completed in the sixth year, 516 BC. The waste cities were likewise rebuilt and repeopled. During this long reign of Darius, the Jews were blessed with a high degree of material prosperity. Under his successor, Xerxes, probably occurred the incidents recurred in the Bible of Esther. In the 7th year of Artaxerxes, the success of Xerxes, Ezra the priest, invested with high powers, headed a second migration. 13 years later, Nehemiah, Artaxerxes, good Lord, cupbearer, but a man of Jewish family, was ordered to proceed to Jerusalem, and aided by Ezra and others, succeeded in secretly fortifying the city, notwithstanding the continuous opposition from Samaritans, Ammonites, and Arabians. The strictest observance of the written law, even of those its parts which had been for some reason or other disregarded, was now rigorously enforced, and many oral ordinances were put into practice, which do not seem to have been much heard of previously. The supreme spiritual authority was vested in a society of pious and preeminently learned men, founded by Ezra, out of which grew the great synagogue. The compilation of transcription of the sacred records began. Periodical public readings and expoundings of the law were instituted, and the vast Targumic, as well as the so-called rabbinical literature, generally dates in its earliest beginnings from this point. During the life of Nehemiah, the breach between the Jews and Samaritans became final by the erection on Mount Gerizim of a rival temple to that at Jerusalem, and the creation of the rival priesthood. Alexander the Great, on his way to conquer the whole East, did not deem it necessary to storm Jerusalem. The inhabitants submitted, and he even designed to have sacrifices offered on his behalf to the national god of his new subjects, a great number of whom, and the Samaritans, he carried away to Egypt, and with these Jewish captives people a third of the new founded city Alexandria. After him, Ptolemy Soter, one of the generals who had become king of Egypt, invaded Syria, took Jerusalem, 301 BC, and carried off 100,000 of the inhabitants, who he forced to settle chiefly in Alexandria and Cyrene. We'll move over to part 3.